Has anyone else in this class ever thought of what life on Mars would be like? Well, hello class, my name is Gavin Ferguson, and today the purpose of my speech is to try and persuade you guys that the movie The Martian is the best science fiction film made in my lifetime. The three reasons I say this are because the science in this film is superbly accurate, and the minute details are very accurate as well. The personality of the aerospace engineers and scientists in this film is a very accurate portrayal of what they're like in real life, and also that science itself develops its own personality throughout the film due to the plot. So to start, I'm going to go over the reasons why the science in this film is so great. So that's my favorite aspect of the movie, is just how accurate the science is and how real life the problems in this movie seem. So I'm gonna go over kind of four things in terms of details that I thought were really interesting. The first being the fact that the scientist, scientist Watney, is actually a botanist. And what's cool is when he gets there and he realizes there's only around a month of food, there's kind of a feeling, or you can kind of get a sense of how he could just feel hopeless and kind of give up. But instead, he uses his knowledge as a botanist kind of as a way of turning it around and as a way of hope. And what was cool is that he kind of makes his own little garden in this laboratory, and he has to get over obstacles that you wouldn't really think of, such as there's only so many potatoes, so he has to figure out how many to plant and how long that they would take to harvest, and essentially kind of map out how many potatoes he would get and how long that they would last him. That's a mission in itself. The fact that there's no microbes on Mars, so he has to use his own poop to fertilize the soil. There's no water on Mars either. I mean, that's the biggest problem, right? So the way that he utilizes jet fuel and condensation to get the water that he needs is pretty ingenious. Also, in terms of temperature, it's very cold on Mars, and there's one situation when he's sleeping in the rover and he's almost freezing at night. And I thought this was one aspect that they put in the movie that didn't have to, that I thought really got into the details of what it would be like living there. That is just something that you wouldn't think of. Another thing would be, let's see. There's one clip when he's moving, or he has to pick up some weight canister, some gas canister, and it says 200 pounds on it. And he picks it up like it's pretty easy. And what's interesting about that is obviously he wouldn't be able to lift 200 pounds on Earth, but Mars only has around 40% of the gravity, so it's actually only around 80 pounds. So that's also another little detail. And then my favorite is actually the slingshot theory that's proposed by Donald Glover, who plays the scientist Rich Purnell. And his theory is essentially because they don't have enough time or enough fuel to pretty much come all the way back down to Earth and then go back on two different missions, he thinks of an idea where he goes around Earth in slingshots and refuels on the way. And I thought that was like a really realistic idea of like a real life solution that they would think of, and just something that isn't out of this world. Like sometimes in movies like Interstellar or Gravity, there's problems that kind of aren't really realistic, but in this movie the problems are really realistic, the solutions are realistic, and I think just how accurate the science is, it all blends really well together. So the second main point is just scientific authenticity. I thought they did a great job at portraying the actual personalities of scientists that would be working on this project. In most scientific movies or sci-fi movies, the scientists are very nerdy, very bland, don't have a sense of humor, but in here, scientist Watney has a great sense of humor, and that kind of guides him through his whole journey on Mars. And also, whether it's the astronauts that went with Professor Watney or the scientists working at JPL and NASA, they all have their own personalities, and it's not just a boring scientist, It kind of makes the movie seem more genuine. And then the last main point is that science itself kind of develops its own character in the movie. And what I mean by that is, in the movie, time after time, there's a problem, and each time the only way to solve the problems is through science. And whether it's people working at NASA or JPL, or just people around the country, I mean, they're all rooting to get this guy home, so it's kind of like a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of leaving no one behind, and they all get around this because of science, or through science. So I just thought that it's a very cool thing that they solve all these problems with science, and that science kind of has its own personality in that way, and that we can all kind of look at science as something that we can rejoice in rather than think of like, oh, it's too complicated for me, or does it really matter? I know some people think that, but in this movie you kind of really get a sense that science plays a large role in our society, and even going forward for the future, that it's going to play an even larger part in terms of finding life elsewhere on Mars. So today I went over why I thought The Martian is the best science fiction film made in my lifetime. In my speech, I went over why and how the science is so accurate, and why I thought that the details really are the shining part in this movie and bring out the true essence of what it would cost to kind of do a mission like this. The second being the authentic personalities of all the scientists, especially scientist Watney. Sorry. He has a great sense of humor, and that is the driving force. And the driving force and the optimism throughout the movie. And then finally, just how science itself kind of develops its own personality through all these accomplishments. So I hope you guys, I hope this convinces you guys to watch the movie, and I promise you guys you will not be disappointed. Thank you.